This is the Scuba Educational Alliance Ocean Podcast, Episode 30. The Scuba Educational Alliance Ocean Podcast is a bi-weekly podcast dedicated to the world of scuba diving, ocean health, sustainability, and fostering a new generation of ocean stewards through diving education. Hello again, everyone. And as always, thanks so very much for tuning into the show today. I'm your host, Jeff Centropino, founder and president of the Scuba Educational Alliance of Connecticut. And we're on a mission to foster a new generation of ocean stewards by breaking down the financial barriers that young men and women face when looking to become scuba divers. So we're now only 1 week away from the Thanksgiving holiday here in the U.S., and that means the kickoff of the holiday season, although I think it's already started, and it's going to be in high gear with Black Friday, Small Business Saturday, Cyber Monday, and most importantly for many nonprofits, Giving Tuesday. This year, more than ever, nonprofits will play an important role as so many programs that people depend on face so much uncertainty. Every donation helps. The past 6 weeks have been quite hectic, and now it's time to regroup after having spent 3 weeks in Indonesia and the Philippines, and then it was off to Orlando for the Diving Equipment and Marketing Association's 2025 show. Last time on the show, I gave you an update on that trip to Southeast Asia. So today, I want to focus on the trade show and hopefully give you an appreciation for how vibrant the dive community is, but also that we have the opportunity to grow and thrive. The show took place in the midst of the government shutdown. In fact, the start of the prime travel time happened just as the Transportation Department announced cuts to the number of flights. I saw some of these impacts firsthand. Fortunately, my flight down on Saturday afternoon made it, although we were delayed a couple of hours, and then the flight plan took us north out of Connecticut, then west towards Pittsburgh before turning south to Orlando. I did hear different stories about flight delays, but for the most part, there weren't any real horror stories about folks getting to the show. And I finally made it to the Rosen Center. That was the host hotel right before 11 p.m. Saturday night. Fortunately, the deli was open at the hotel and I was able to grab a sandwich. The first order of business for me was the DEMA Board of Directors meeting. That takes place on Sunday afternoon. We gathered at the hotel, and this was a bittersweet board meeting for all of us. Last month, Tom Ingram, the president and CEO of DEMA, announced his retirement at the end of the year. Now, Tom has been at the helm for 23 years and has guided the organization with a steady hand through some challenging times, like the COVID-19 crisis. He has done so much to promote the dive industry and manage the complex relationships that exist across all the stakeholder groups, not to mention the work he has done on public policy and legislation on behalf of scuba diving. Tom's shoes will be hard to fill. The board meeting also was the last one for me of my 3-year term. The 3 years seemed to have gone by fast. I was fortunate enough to finish my term under the retailer stakeholder group, and I hope to continue to serve on the board, but under a different stakeholder group. I've been nominated under the category that includes nonprofit organizations, and the election kicked off at the show, and it runs through mid-January 2026. On Monday, I headed over to the convention center from the hotel. This year, we were in the West Hall of the Orange County Convention Center, and that made for a very short walk from the back of the hotel across the Sky Bridge right to the exhibit hall. So easy. Monday is the big push to get the exhibit hall all set for the Tuesday opening. As a board member, I was able to walk the floor and start to get a feel for all the excitement that was building. Now, I'm always amazed at all the hard work and dedication that the exhibitors put into the show. It also gives me a chance to say hello to folks as they get ready for a jam-packed 4 days. Also on Monday, a number of different organizations put on various training programs and seminars. So while the exhibit floor doesn't open until Tuesday, there was still quite a bit of activity going on. And then the big day finally arrived. But before we cut the ribbon, Greg Holt from Scuba Radio got the crowd revved up with his normal half-hour warm-up routine. They have a lot of fun with various games and activities with some incredible prizes. This year, the crowd started lining up almost an hour before he took the stage with his crew. And then, after a year-long effort, DEMA officially opened at 10 a.m. on November 11th as Tom cut the ribbon one last time. And the crowd was off and running. Now, there are a lot of people who think that the DEMA Show is shrinking and not being attended like it once was. And while it is true that the show suffered when the pandemic hit, causing cancellation in 2020, it has made a remarkable comeback despite many negative impressions. In fact, this year, the number of registered attendees was up significantly from the past several years and pretty much back to pre-pandemic levels. Dive professionals, retail shops, training agencies, nonprofits, travel destinations, and manufacturers are all understanding the value of the connectedness that the show offers and the opportunity to do real business. The number of qualified retail buyers at the show was larger than any past show. And it was really great to see that the head group who recently acquired Aqualung had a big splash at the show. They included all their brands, Mares, Zogs, SSI, Revo Rebreathers, and Aqualung, including Apex. And they had a show of force with their sales team. That really energized people around the show floor. And then Scuba Pro was back with a large presence as well. So while in the past manufacturers were pulling out of the DEMA Show, they are coming back because of the value of this event. Now, from a technology perspective, there's a lot going on with respect to underwater navigation, particularly as it relates to the dive computer market. Obviously, there has been a lot of news about Garmin offering of the smart buoy technology using that sonar to communicate between dive computers and the surface. Well, Shearwater is putting GPS in their Swift transmitter, so you will be able to get entry and exit positions. That's going to feed into their app, so I'm guessing they will build more capabilities down the line. And then there was this new technology being showcased called Reef Track. Now, this uses two devices that will guide you around a previously mapped dive site, and I think it's in the early stages, and the price is a little steep, but down the road, this could make navigation around a dive site very safe and easy. Looks like we're on the cusp of making underwater navigation like using the GPS on our phones. The competition in the dive computer market is intense, with Suunto and Ratio offering options to compete with Shearwater and Garmin and the host of other tried and true dive computers. Dive travel destinations and resorts from around the world are prolific at the DEMA Show. It can be a bit overwhelming. Not only that, when you talk to the folks manning the booths, you get excited about going to their location, only to realize that you can't go everywhere. Now, I pretty much decided before the show that I wanted to get back to the Philippines next year. The Philippines are well represented at the DEMA Show, and you can pretty much pick your spot. But for me, my go-to resort is Atlantis in Dumaguete. So we're in the process of trying to get something set up for next year. We'll see how that goes. But I also always look for something different, and this time I got Fiji stuck in my brain. Not sure how that happened. Well, it's Fiji. So I spent some time doing research on getting out there as well as narrowing down some specific spots. Good news is that Fiji Airways has direct flights from Dallas, San Francisco, Los Angeles, or Honolulu. That will pretty much have to be a 2027 trip, at least for now, because 2026 is full. That's what happens at DEMA. You fill your travel schedule for several years. Ocean conservation is a big deal for scuba divers, and there were a number of organizations at the show who were not only looking to get support from the dive community, but also to educate all of us in attendance. I didn't get to talk to all of them because there were just so many, but I did manage to hit some of the booths, including the Coral Restoration Foundation, Reef Relief, Oceana, and iCare. All of these organizations are, as well as a host of others, are doing some great work as we look to combat climate change, plastic pollution, overfishing, destructive practices, and work towards protecting and restoring the oceans. Back in July, in episode 21, I told you about how I became a dive pirate. It all started last year at the DEMA Show in Las Vegas. Well, I am still a dive pirate, and I had a chance to catch up with Helen and Greg at their booth, which, by the way, had a lot of traffic. Their annual trip this year is to Bonaire for a week at Divi Flamingo. Greg told me that there was a lot of interest in the trip, and a lot of people decided to make the journey down there. So pretty much the first thing I did when I got back home was to sign Donna and me up. The trip is all set for June 13th to the 20th. If you're looking to give back, expand your diving horizons, and just dive with some great folks, check out the Dive Pirates trip to Bonaire in 2026. We hear a lot these days about how the dive community and the dive industry is aging out and that we really don't have enough younger divers entering into the sport. Now, this is definitely something that needs to be addressed, but I got to tell you, there were a lot of young people attending the DEMA Show. It did feel fresh and alive. Yes, we need to continue to focus on growing the dive industry with the next generation of scuba divers, diving professionals, dive shop owners, and those entering into the industry overall. Now, here's an example of building the next generation of dive shop owners. I did a presentation at the show on entering into new dealer agreements, and there was a young woman who sat in. She had just become a dive shop owner earlier this year and was overwhelmed. However, by coming to the show, she felt connected, supported, and reaffirmed that she will be successful. She connected with other new and younger dive shop owners as well. I believe that this generation will continue to evolve the dive shop model, expand the sport, and invigorate the dive industry. So, with the end of the DEMA Show 2025, I also finished up my 3-year term on the board of directors, as I said. It's been such a rewarding 3 years where I've had the opportunity to learn, participate, network, and hopefully make a difference. I'm also hoping that I will be able to continue to serve a second term, as there is always so much more to be done. For now, however, as we put the DEMA Show 2025 in the rearview mirror and look ahead to 2026 in New Orleans, I've got to say, Orlando tells me that yes, the dive industry is vibrant, alive, and energized. Well, that wraps up this episode, and for all of those here in the United States, next week is Thanksgiving and time for some turkey and football. Enjoy. Until next time, take care, everyone. This has been the Scuba Educational Alliance Ocean Podcast, a show dedicated to the world of scuba diving, ocean health, sustainability, and fostering a new generation of ocean stewards through diving education. Talk to you again real soon.